Okay, it is Monday, December 30th, 2019. We'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, minutes and reports received and filed. Commissioner Committee Liaison Reports, upcoming meetings, events.
We have Cole County Communities Thursday, do you remember seeing an
No,
email on that?
no, it's gonna be next week, because we're gonna talk on the census. Carrie and I and
Okay.
Steve Crow, we're the program, and Melissa.
Guess I need to change the date on that one.
Yeah.
East Side Business Association Friday. Big Whiskeys, I believe.
Ooh,
Yes.
Correct, yeah.
yes.
On Cole County Communities on the 9th, I just realized that's the governor's prayer breakfast, so I mean, we might want to.
Oh.
We'll change that date.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll just move to February.
Yeah.
We need to get a hold of Sean
Okay.
and see if, because January's kind of a cockeyed month.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have that on my calendar now for January 9th, and it's always somebody that answers it and sends it out to everybody else the third or fourth time.
mm,
I've done that time or two before, that's what I,
surely not.
I think other than New Year's, this week is fairly slow. Kinda like that. That's all I got until next week.
I think the only thing I have is, Monday, the 6th, I have a, Decision Innovation Solutions meeting, for the Masbida grant subcommittee meeting on the port stuff, so that's at 10:30, I think, so.
Yes, nice and quiet. I've got the bridal show at the Link on Sunday, Jeff, since you're engaged, Kathy ought to come to that.
I don't need any kind of pressure on anybody.
Okay. Commission comments, bids and contracts, addendum to advanced correctional contract. Is that you, Mr. Sheriff?
It is, but we're gonna have to postpone that. I still haven't received the contract from them for Jill to look at.
Okay.
So we'll have to wait until we get that. Hopefully it'll be, if I could get it on next agenda, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, we'll do that. Any unfinished business? Okay, accounts payable review.
I'd ask for approval of accounts payable, few out there, the last one for the year.
I move that we approve accounts payable pending review.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Tornado disaster expense discussion.
Okay, I think we've discussed some of this, in the past, but, so, to bring you up to date, the Advent Group, for all their expenses that they covered while they set up our distribution center at, Capital City West Event Center, has an invoice that they've sent to us for their meals, their fuel, the insurance for the Penske trucks. They had two, large Penske trucks that helped deliver items, came to the amount of a little over $21,000. So what we've looked at doing, and they also gave us, it was actually $26,000. They gave us a $5,000 donation from the church back to help cover some of those expenses. So talking with Mayor Turgeon and Steve Crow, we decided to come to the commission to see about splitting that cost between the city and the county. This is not a final figure because there's some things on here that I want to talk to their administration about. Their daily per diem for meals and mileage and stuff is a lot higher than what the state is. They listed that as the state, but it's much higher now. I know their office is in Iowa, but they worked here in Missouri, so we'll see a little bit less on that. And To back up a little bit, I have to apologize to the commission. When I signed that MOU, I signed that as a representative of emergency management for the city and county, as a best interest for the community. And there's some things that I didn't realize that we would be charged for, so I take that upon myself. But in all reality, they did a great service for the people in the community. Over $750,000 of items were donated. That has since been moved since the last part of October. It's out now at the old Sears warehouse building. Farmers have agreed to let us use that at no cost. So the Catholic Charities is running that operation. So they do all the case management, and if they see people need the bedding, the furniture, refrigerators, whatever, they literally go and see where those people are living. It's not just donating that to anybody that can sell it off the back of the truck. It's per need basis. So I know there's a lot of discussion about a lot of the other groups that help the community. The Samaritan Purse, the Missouri Baptist, the Team Rubicon that came in and helped with disaster items. This is just a little bit different because they did provide a service. You know, when you get 4 truckloads of Executive One furniture that comes in for the people, where they have new beds, new mattresses, new furniture, a lot of those people destroyed. It wasn't they could come and get this stuff. Like I said, it had to go through case management to prove that they now had a home to rent. They did need bedroom furniture, they need stuff for their children, and that's exactly how that was worked with United Way. So with Carrie and I both sitting on the long-term recovery group, this is something that's still gonna be going on because we know Habitat Humanity has agreed to build 5 homes this coming year. So there may be some lumber and other things that can be bought out of the donation that's been received through United Way. So I'm asking today to help partner with the city and split the cost once we get a number on this and get that down to the figure that we feel is comfortable. This is reimbursable through FEMA, as we've been told. I got the packet last week of all their sign-in, sign-out sheets, the hours that they put in. They've sent everything to us. That's what FEMA will require on our documents. So Gary, I don't know if you have anything to ask. When we met the other day, I want to say I did call Commissioner Tom Wright of Miller County to see if there'd be any way they could put some money in. He was going to talk to the city of Eldon since they was the worst hit, and I have not got any information back from him yet. So,
And
you got it?
thank you, I think you covered it real well, and appreciate the partnership between the city and county. Thank you, Bill, for helping with all of that.
Well, we haven't been asked for much, and this, I mean, we really did help the people of Cole County, and Jefferson City is in Cole County.
Sure.
You know, so.
And as I was talking to Chris a little bit ago, the Penske trucks, you know, a lot of times this warehouse may be in Kansas City that it was shipped into, so they drove those trucks to there to pick it up, bring it to here. We also set up 4 pods, we call them points of distribution centers within the city. Quinn Chapel, Building Community Bridges, Salvation Army, and I'm trying to think of one of them. Anyway, so they could call out there and say, we've ran out of diapers, we've ran out of bedding. They'd load that on the truck and take it to these other areas for the people more affected in that area. So that was a big expense, good time for those folks too.
I did want to say Capital West Christian
Yeah,
Church
West.
did donate the use of the
Yeah.
warehouse space, which
Oh.
Jody, who was in charge of this group.
Yeah,
of
they
the
didn't
warehouse
charge,
center, so that's highly unusual to.
Yeah, we were there from right after the tornado to end of October.
Yeah, they're good partners.
Free
They're
warehouse
good
space.
people out there.
Yeah,
So,
no- at no
no,
cost.
you did an awesome job, Bill.
So it's up to commission, but once I get this final bill, and if we get anything from Eldon, we hope maybe if we can even get $1,000, it'd be nice, because they did drive stuff down there and deliver furniture and stuff to a lot of those folks too. I think that was a good partnership, Cole County and Miller County, because we were both affected. We were a little larger, and I think that was a good fix for us too, to help our neighbors. I'll answer any questions.
Got any?
No, I don't have any questions. I was gonna mention that I think Habitat's doing 8 houses this year.
Oh, are they? Okay.
Yeah.
I heard 5, 8, that's good.
Yeah,
great.
They're gonna do a blitz build, so they're doubling what they did
Yeah,
last
they're
year, and
asking for
they're asking for, volunteers, money.
Yep.
And you got the mayor's build, so, I don't know, see how much time I got, maybe a little competition between the commission and mayors.
Oh, don't get Wheeler involved,
Make that
man.
happen.
Don't get Wheeler involved, because Kerry will win.
Yeah.
Don't put that in there, Jeff.
No, but I will bring back the final total, to the commission and the city as well. I think we've done a great thing for our community, as I mentioned, no one else to add to it.
So do we need to approve something today when we don't know what the amount is?
I just asked for approval to go ahead and get this final bill and then submit it whenever I get it to you. If that's okay, or however you wanna do it, I
So the
don't
ones
care.
you sent us aren't final?
No, because, like I said, Jeff, in that, it shows like 66 cents a mile for,
Yeah, I thought
fuel.
they had that all
Yeah.
itemized out,
And,
so.
so many dollars a day for per diem, that is way above the state rate. So if I can get that lessened down, it
Okay,
won't be a
so-
lot, but
So we could approve it not to exceed.
you could, sure, that'd be fine. You can take
If
this
you
and
get it
split it in
talked
half.
down, then that's always
Yeah, we like
good,
that.
or if more donations come in to get it down, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm good. If you're all good with that, I think, that's good with you, Gary?
So what if we get
So,
more
what is,
bills?
21,
I think Adventist is complete.
Yeah.
You won't be
Yeah.
there anymore.
They're not here, they're gone.
Right.
Yeah.
so right now you're looking at 10,576 apiece
I
at
guess
that.
that's what
So
my
if you,
question mainly was geared towards, or is this a final bill, or
this is the final bill.
We just-
Yeah.
Final bill from the Adventist?
Yes,
from the Adventist, but
right.
it could be more come down the road.
Yeah, there could be
Don't know of
bills,
any.
could be bills coming from other people.
The only one we're worried about is the forklift, and we're hoping maybe Scholastic might help out with that. We haven't seen anything on that.
So then half of the 21,000 and change,
Yeah,
so 10,576.
We definitely need to do some discussion that we pay our mileage reimbursement rate or the
Mhm.
states, because,
yeah, that's what when I first looked, I know the state's, I think 39 cents.
yeah, I mean, when it comes to submitting that for reimbursement through the feds, we're gonna have to either pay our rate or the state rate. If we pay that rate, we
Right.
won't get reimbursed for it.
And per diem, $66 a day for food. I think state's like 41, 43, somewhere in there.
Ours is 35.
35, yeah, so,
Yeah.
They're from out of state.
Right, so
if
it'd
you
be
pick
40.
yeah, but they lived in state, but I'm thinking they might be using Iowa state rates instead of Missouri, so.
Yeah.
So,
But these folks lived in St. Louis, they drove back and forth every day, some of them had to stay overnight, so basically this is their lodging. Because there for the first 2 weeks, they were open 7 days a week, 12 to 14 hour days, so.
So pay 50% of the cost, not to exceed $11,000, or,
And then make sure it gets approved by what we can be
Yes.
reimbursed for.
Perfect.
Good
We'll be
with
under
that. I move that we approve paying 50% of the cost to the Adventists, not to exceed $11,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We look forward to sharing that with you.
Yes.
Thank you for your-
Thanks, Gary.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
coming.
Yeah.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Okay. We're gonna move things around, because I saw Matt and go over that way, but I think we'll go to the assessor's office to present natural disasters.
I wanna make her sit through all this
Oh,
other stuff.
No,
Do a copy of
do
that.
we need to discuss
Bye.
Chris's bill too? Chris's-
It's in there.
This is
It's
the-
in there, okay, okay, okay. Come on, Jackie.
I'll talk to you about that later. What are we agreeing to
We
pay?
need to stay for security.
Just the registration fee,
Oh, just the registration fee?
directly.
Not
to
any,
them.
not any hotels or anything?
No.
I
Okay,
think he sent me a email or something on that.
okay.
He likes me.
We have 2 additional
I don't know
homes
why,
that came
but-
in before the end of the year that were hit by the tornado. So I sent them in the Excel sheet to prorate them.
questions, I looked at it last week.
Mhm.
We had a couple of them added, appreciate you taking care of those right away. You know, they were having troubles with the one, so.
And he didn't know what number he was calling, cause I asked him what office he was calling and he wasn't sure.
I didn't even ask, I was like, we got our go-to person, he'll take care of it, so. Yeah,
I don't really have a question on this, but I don't remember if I talked to you, Jackie, or who I talked to about this, but when somebody, I think we've done this two different ways. When a tax exempt entity purchases a property, there's like a date or something when the taxes are either paid or they're not paid. And did we ever find anything out about that?
I sent you an email.
Yeah, but it wasn't clear. And I sent that to Jill. And so, obviously, I don't, if the school district buys something, to me, the taxes are due up until the date of the purchase, regardless of when that date comes into play, because it was under private ownership up until that date. And that should all be done through the closing. But it seems like we're wiping the taxes off if they buy it before a certain date, and I don't think that that's right. And I know you did send me something, and I forwarded it to Jill, but regardless of who buys it, the taxes are due up until the date it's purchased. And they shouldn't be wiped off. They shouldn't just be voided. I mean, whether we buy it or whether the school district buys it or the city buys it or whatever, the taxes should be due through the purchase date.
I thought they were prorated that way.
No, so it's happened different ways. I think sometimes we've done it that way, and other times they bought it and they wiped the taxes off for the whole year. And anyway, so I don't know. I'll have Jill check on it further, but I mean, even when we bought Adams Street, I mean,
Yeah.
the taxes, I'm pretty sure were paid through the date of the purchase. And so all that should be done through the title company. Isn't that right, Jeff? I mean, should be.
I'm trying to remember if we were agreeing to abate the taxes or something through that date on the Adams Street one.
I don't think we did, though. I think the Realtor asked if we would do that, and I don't think we did.
I think there was some questions as to when that payment came in.
Because-
I think that they had already been abated for the year.
Yeah, I remember the exact circumstances, but I agree with you. If we buy it and it's exempt, and we buy it on July 1, then it should still be paid up to
July 1, right.
by the
Yeah.
other.
And then
owner.
going forward, it's tax exempt, but,
Mhm.
I mean, somebody owes the taxes because it was privately owned up until that date.
Well, I think the hard part of that is that the current year's taxes are not in the system at that point in time. So the assessor's not rolling their book until September for the current year taxes.
But so when you do a private sale, and so say I sell my house to Jeff, when I have to pay the taxes at closing for my amount, or whatever it is, and then he pays.
Yeah, it's gonna be prorated.
Yeah, it's gonna be prorated. So, I mean, it's no different. It should be prorated for the taxes for the full year. And so, that's all I'm saying. It needs to be consistent. It shouldn't be wiped off, regardless of what time of year it is. It should be paid through,
Thank you, sir.
through the date of the closing.
So were any of them on this E&O list?
So I think what's happened in the past, and so I'd have to pull up that email, is sometimes if it was purchased before, was it September or something?
I think they've done it if it's purchased by a tax exempt entity, the taxes were abated.
For the whole year then, if it's bought
So-
or if it's bought on December 31st, then.
See-
So if I sold my house to say the public schools or whatever, they wouldn't have to pay anything on it. And if I sold it December 31st, then I'd get my money all back that was possibly escrowed, or just wouldn't have to pay, I guess. That's what you're saying's happening, right?
Yeah, so the taxes for the whole year are being wiped off.
But see, in one of these, like the Holiday Drive house, that's not being bought by the schools.
No,
That's
these two were strictly.
these are
tornado
strictly,
homes.
they're were residential homes that as of May 22nd were wiped out.
Yes,
So they would pay taxes up through May 22nd
on the home.
on the home, yeah.
And then they're paying on the land for all 12 months.
Yeah, yeah. But that's what I thought when I looked at those, and I thought, because it was funny, just kind of just that one house on Holiday got the most devastation.
We've had some around there that were not totally destroyed.
Yeah,
They said this one twisted on the foundation, so they've already got a demo permit.
yeah, yeah. So these two, I think they do pay up till May 22nd. And, yeah.
I can check with the state tax commission and see if they have any insight on that as far as prorating exemption for,
Yeah, and the ones on, that the schools bought, yeah. That might, if you would. I kind of agree with Chris. It's kind of like, you know, before May 22nd, people were living in those homes. And so,
Well, and if they were escrowing it through the bank, the taxes were being escrowed, and they were making that
Yeah.
payment.
yeah,
I mean, I think this is a different circumstance, and I'm not really talking about these two at
Yeah,
all. I'm
yeah,
just talking
yeah,
about in
yeah.
general.
No, I agree.
I mean, otherwise, you're basically, so if we buy a property and we waive the entire tax amount for that property, well, the school district is out their money, and every other taxing entity is out their money. In the same way, if the school district buys a property and we wipe the taxes out, well, we're out our money on that as well. And so, I just don't think that that's right. I don't think we should be able to waive their tax amount.
No.
They shouldn't be able to waive ours. The taxes just should be paid.
Well, see, that's what happened with the housing authority when they took those 5 properties of Barbara Fisher's. Joe went over to the court, and the back taxes and all the other liens and stuff that were against those properties were taken out first before she got her check. So I wouldn't think this would be any different.
I don't know, but I think, obviously Tom's not sure, I think, how to really do that either. And it just, there was an email thread, and it kind of, Jill talked to Randy Turley or something over at the State Tax Commission, and I think it says we can abate, but it doesn't say that we have to.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think we should just develop a policy on that, and just so that we're all on the same page for everything moving forward. But so anyway.
Okay. Are you okay with
Yeah,
these
yeah, I'm
two
good.
properties that we get off on tangents?
Just more errors and omissions here, or just a?
no, these are only tornado homes, these two.
So we're just making an adjustment to the property value.
Correct.
I move that we approve the adjustments to the property values as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thanks, Jackie.
Ryan.
Run like hell. Okay. Somebody needs to go get that.
You may go get them.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
I think, do we have anything up there? Ah. Yep.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Lots of questions.
Thank you.
Not that different?
No, it's probably the same thing. I just
Yeah.
printed it off in color.
Yours is color, yours is prettier.
No, hold on. Give me a break. Same thing. Sorry.
Indian giver.
Yeah, there's 4 pages here. So
I got 2 pages. Oh,
Yeah,
on
but
front and back, yeah. Okay,
Alright. That should be, so that's, sorry.
Is this same stuff you emailed us?
I did.
yeah, and I printed that off.
Just making sure you had it. All right, so the first one is the write-off and collections, if you'd like to, or actually, let's go to the financial hardship, which is the one that has kind of the three pictures on the back with the forms. So a couple of things that we have to do is under Medicare guidelines in Chapter 3 of the CMS manual, we have to go after as aggressively for individuals without Medicare or Medicaid as we do individuals with Medicare or Medicaid for recouping those costs and deductibles. There are circumstances as benefits and things like that of employment that kind of exclude that process, but we do have to make sure that we're going after them. One of the other aspects of it, though, is also financial hardship, and those individuals of can we collect, you know, kind of getting that blood from a turnip type of analogy. And so what this does is this kind of outlines that. So under the financial hardship part of it, basically this goes and says, A, it has to meet medical necessity. So somebody that calls for something that truly doesn't need an ambulance, we're not going to entertain financial hardship on that because they should have never called in the first place. So the other part of that is also it has to be an emergency call out of hospital. So transfers and emergency transfers would not qualify under that. It would be strictly calling 911 from that point to collect from there for financial hardship. So that would be the first criteria. And then, excuse me, what a lot of people use is the federal poverty guidelines that are published annually. And so I've listed what those federal guidelines currently are for 2019. HHS hasn't published the 2020 yet, but on the last form, those show those. And basically the way it would work is anyone twice the level of poverty based on their family unit size would then get 100% discount off of their remaining deductible after insurance is done. Anything of 3 times the poverty level would get up to 70%, and then 4 times the poverty level would get a 50% off of theirs. What we're finding is that in people, especially elderly individuals that are under on a fixed income, say they're getting $12,000 a year out of Medicare and that's their only source of income or something along those lines, they're not paying anyway. And so going down that hole of trying to get money that we're never going to recover is pretty difficult. Right now, and has been for years, is what we call self-pay. Self-pay is the deductible and or uninsured. You're averaging under 10% of that collection from the individuals we transport. So A, this would help clean the books by showing that, you know, basically a write-off process. And then it kind of goes down and allows, so it goes and talks about the federal guidelines. It basically then someone has to come. We try to put them on a payment plan. If we're unsuccessful of doing that, then we would move to looking at are they qualified for some type of, a lot of places, hospitals will call it charity care or something along those lines. And there is some guidelines out there that we need to be a part of that process as well under the federal health insurance process. When you go down catastrophic health events, you know, somebody has a massive stroke, they are the only breadwinner for the family and are unable to work any longer. we're really not gonna get any money out of them in the first place. And second off, they've had now a life-altering occurrence that has impacted their family unit significantly. So that goes down and basically talks about when we would be able to offer that financial hardship. And then basically it does delegate that authority from you to me to look at those, so I don't have to bring each individual case up. We get about 3 requests every 2 weeks or so for those. Right now, we're averaging about 1 that we're okay with that would meet that criteria. So it's not frequent, but it's not something that's uncommon as well. So basically the way it would work is they would be required to fill out the application for financial hardship. They would get that from our billing company. They would have to provide us their W-2s, their income tax forms, pay stubs, all of these different requirements. We would then enter that into this form, or they would fill this out, give us the information, understand that if they do any type of false reporting in that information, then we would immediately, once we found out, make their balance due in full at that moment. And then if not, 30 days later, we would send them to collections. Then, once we got that all back from the person or the responsible party, we would fill out the worksheet, we would make a determination, does it meet the guidelines that are in here? And then we would either approve or disapprove that financial hardship. So that's the first one. I think that one's pretty clear cut as far as what we're intending to do. It's if you guys agree with that one or not.
So you said 2 times the poverty level is eligible for 100%?
So 2 times the poverty level is a family income of $24,000 a year. And that's gross, not net. So that would be somebody probably.
For one person?
Correct.
A family?
Correct, for one person.
For a single adult?
Correct.
You said 2 times the poverty level for an adult or a family or whatever it is, but they're eligible for 100%?
Off of their deductible, or what their remaining balance from their insurance would be. So if their insurance paid 80%, you'd get 20. So normally insurance pays 80/20, and so for $1,000 ambulance bill, it would be insurance would pay $800.
So what if they don't have insurance?
So that's where you would go, and they could be potentially eligible for the entire balance written off. Now, generally, what we find is those individuals that don't have insurance, they don't meet medical necessity when they've done that. If they didn't have insurance, most of them are calling for frivolous reasons anyway, and they wouldn't be eligible because they wouldn't meet medical necessity. So they have to have had a true emergency in order to even be eligible for that.
Okay, and then 3 times the poverty level was how much?
3 times the poverty level, 70%. So that would take them up to a family income of approximately $36,000 for an individual.
And then what was 4 times the poverty level?
4 times was 50%, sir.
And that's where it ended?
Yes, sir. Anything over that, that they would be responsible, outside of any catastrophic event. So if you want some of these, adjusted or changed, or, however you want to go about it, this is kind of more of a discussion, see where you guys like to go, if you're good with this, or if you want to make some changes to it.
So are 7 and 8 talking about the same thing? Because on 7 it says 60% to 100%, and then 8's got 50 to 100%. Are those 2 different? One's for balance over. One's
Yeah,
for
so that's a typo
discount.
on mine. So it should have been the 57 should say 50%, not 60. That's my error.
Okay, I was just wondering if there's 2 different things, so.
Yeah, so that should be 50.
I'm fine with trying those discounts. That's like an industry standard that you've worked with before, we can try it out.
It is. It's actually a little, the discount amounts are a little less, and the poverty levels are a little higher than some agencies have. We felt that some of the agencies, because they're either based on real estate tax assessment, or they have a higher tax percentage, sales tax percentage, that they were able to to do that. Some places do what's called compassionate billing, where they write off anything insurance doesn't pay completely. We're not able to do that. And so this was kind of a way to help those that truly have that financial hardship without just making a blanket case that, you know, nobody gets a bill. Questions about this one?
No, I think that's the only one that I saw or I had.
I'm good.
Okay. And then the second one is the write-off authority and collections. And so what this one does is kind of talking about who do we have, who do we want to write off as benefit. And so on the first page, and this one's more of a discussion versus that, but under the first section, these are the individuals. What we'd like to do is try to offer as a benefit of employment to the county that their share of that deductible, should they call, would be, you know, written off per se as a benefit to the employee. We put in there elected officials of the county, city councils, and their dependents. We can certainly take that aspect out if that's something that you don't like. Current employees and their dependents as an aspect of their service. Current part-times and first responders employed by us, and then anyone that's in a firefighter, law enforcement, first responders, or dispatchers when they're transported on duty in the line of duty. So, right, you have a firefighter that gets injured in a fire, something like that, we would then, you know, not go after any remaining deductible. Generally, those are covered under workman's comp. However, there are times where they may just get sick while they're on duty from an exposure that may not initially be attributed to workman's comp, and so those can get kind of messy. And so what we'd like to do is offer that out to them as part of, you know, thanks for serving the community. We're certainly able to adjust any of these if you'd like. This was just kind of a working document on that aspect of things.
Currently not doing any of this, correct?
Correct. So the law enforcement and things like that, we've been kind of looking at saying, is it work related? Was it something that were they assisting us on the call? Something like that. In that aspect, we've been trying to go ahead and, you know, not go after those aspects of things. I think it's the right thing to do, so we haven't. But we wanted to formalize that process. The other ones we have not been doing.
Cap Region has a policy similar to that for their board and for their employees as well.
I'm not one to try to reinvent the wheel all the time, so a lot of this is coming from other agencies that I've reached out and gotten different copies and kind of melded things together to do it.
So are you recommending for all county employees or just employees of the Cook County Emergency Medical Services?
So it would be all Cole County employees. So A on that would be all Cole County employees. What we tried to do.
Okay, I don't see.
I don't see
read
that, I don't read that either.
So that's what.
Oh.
I
I
see
can add
elected
that.
officials and city councils.
Okay, so I can add, that should have been in there. That's
Yeah.
my error.
Okay, well, good, I'm glad you had that included there, so it's.
One of the questions is, do you want to include their dependents or not in that process, or just the employees specifically? And then do you want to include other elected officials, meaning outside of the county elected officials, but like city governments, things like that, as far as their elected officials, or do you want to remove that piece? They're not employed by the county, so it wouldn't be a benefit.
I'm leaning towards county employees, so
Okay.
It's gonna be very hard to
Yeah.
police other agencies, employees, and dependents, I think.
So it wouldn't be for the city employees, it would be only for the elected officials of those of those governmental bodies. But we can certainly strip that out. I mean, they're not employed or elected to serve the whole county.
Well,
So
I mean, I just,
we would be responsible for it through our billing company. They would submit their employment information, and that's how we would facilitate that.
Matt and I did have a discussion about this because I pointed it out. And the logic behind all of this is to have it as a benefit for Cole County employees. And then with the first responders, that's for their service in the line of duty and the kind of a customary thing. So if you extend it to the Jefferson City Council, they're not serving Cole County. They may be serving the community, but so is the school board and any other number of elected officials in political subdivisions. So I just wanted to point that out. And I also wanted to point out too, this is taxpayer supported. So you get somebody who says, well, my taxes support EMS, why don't I get it? These are just things I'm throwing out as food for thought. I'm not giving an opinion one way or the other.
Well, city councils, you're talking then Russellville, you're talking
Right, it's
Wardsville,
local
you're
agency.
talking Loman, you're talking Centertown. So you're talking their city councils and their
Correct.
aldermen or
We didn't
council.
want to limit it to Jeff City. We didn't think that would be fair if
Yeah,
we
I-
went down that road.
I think I'm like,
I mean, I just think this is a slippery slope and we need to put the brakes on this. And I mean, yeah, it's a benefit, but the benefit also is we have health insurance to cover the cost. I mean, that's what we provide at Cole County. And so somebody that's on our insurance is gonna get the benefit of the cost of the insurance.
But this is just the uninsured part of it, correct?
Correct.
So if our insurance, and we're insured, and it covers our 80% of it, or whatever number, and if you have a $10,000 emergency ambulance ride, and you're responsible for 2,000, and we basically would be writing off the 2,000, right?
Correct.
We don't check to see if there's a hardship
But
or
we're
anything like that.
gonna get billed for the other 8.
Correct.
No, on the back end. We're
Correct.
getting billed, it's coming through a third-party administrator, it's coming right back to us, and we're paying the 8,000. So, yeah, you're gonna write off the 2, well, why don't we just not pay the 8 and write off the 2? I mean, if you're gonna go that far, you just don't even turn it in.
So that is an option as well as far as county.
But I mean, I'm not saying that we do that either,
Right.
but at the same time, I mean, what did the ambulance ride cost? What's the savings? I mean, we give the employee the benefit of writing off the 2, but we're still paying the 8 out of our health insurance fund. Now, somebody may not be in the health insurance fund that may get the benefit. Maybe somebody that's got a spouse or something that works somewhere else that has their insurance. Well,
This first has really come up.
Right.
I mean, this is all
Correct.
something new, so
Yep.
we can,
I
we
just,
need to kick around some different ideas, kind of like having a nurse at a health department that would, be on call to take care of us and try to keep our costs down too, Do
Right.
we even bill ourselves for it, or we say, hey, this was a county employee, or keep the costs down on the insurance as well, so.
The only thing that we were looking at on that aspect was not having any for a county employee, is that the department would have expense in, say it's a cardiac arrest of them or a family member, that can get real expensive real quick. And so that's why we wanted to try to recover at least the actual cost of the medications, the fuel, those types of real costs that we have. So if we just did a blanket not bill, which is okay, I mean, we certainly can do that, but we were just wanted to try to make sure that some of those costs were at least recouped in that process. So this is just, food for thought more than anything on this one. And then, so if you guys want to kick around the first part of it, going on in that is if you go, basically it says who, so number 3 talks about that we're gonna go and make a reasonable effort to collect. This is the part of Medicare that we have to ensure, again, that we're doing under their Chapter 3. At some point, though, once it becomes evident that we can no longer collect, so deceased patients, obviously it's gonna be hard, incarcerated patients, you're not gonna get anything out of them, more than likely. Hardship, again, that's based on the one before. Bankrupt patients, we have to be able to write off. Medicaid patients, and patients with accounts balances under $5. Reason for the $5 is that it'll end up costing us more trying to go after that cost than it actually is worth. So one of the things that we get frequently asked on number 4 is workman's comp and or vehicle accidents, things like that where a lawyer's involved. They want to, generally they'll call and say, we have authority to pay this with X if we can get a discount out of it. Otherwise, we have been telling them no, and then we've been having to try to go back and find the patient and then not get that money. So that's been a challenge, so we'd like to be able to give up to 7% on that to try to obtain that money up front to increase that self-pay or that deductible side. Pre-collection discounts on number 5. Again, what we're trying to do is prevent things from going to collection but maximize the recovery process. And so basically, if somebody is willing to pay in full at the time of their request, then if they're up to $1,000 or just under $1,000, they could get a 10% discount by paying in full immediately. And anything over $1,000 in their balance, they could get a 15% if they pay immediately right then and there. They can't be put on a payment plan or anything like that. What we found, and I've also spoken with numerous industry leaders, is that if you can't collect, if someone's willing to pay right then, take it then, because the chances of you getting it over the course of 5 months or a year greatly decreases. And so the average ability, this should increase our cash flow, even though we're decreasing, up to 15%. We can't go any higher than 15% because Medicare, you can't go above what their costs are. So we are capped at that based on Medicare. So that's what that part of it would be. And
Will
then
that be on their bill when they receive it? Like if you pay within this
We
many
could do
days,
that.
you have this payment, if not, it's this payment?
so we could do that if we thought that was a good idea.
Because all I see is multiple refunds of, hey, I paid the whole amount, but I paid it timely, so now I gotta refund my 10% back, or,
So it wouldn't be, they'd have to either ask for it or we could put it on the bill. So we could do it either way, but we wouldn't go back and refund just because somebody paid. So we could put it on there though if we wanted, hey, if paid up front, this would be your bill. We could certainly do that. And probably a good idea to try to maximize that recovery.
We're all
Is
good
that still
shape.
going through collections, or,
No, sir, that's pre-collection. So,
that's
Chelsea.
if you pay it
so that'd be
before.
Wait a minute,
before
Chelsea.
we send it to our billing company?
no, sir. So you have your billing company and then you have your collection, your collection agency that's, the guy's calling you on the phone, like, where they
So is the billing company willing to take a less percentage if that happens?
Sure, because they know, they've also, because we've discussed it with them, they understand that they will get more as well, because if they can get somebody to actually pay, it's still more money in their pocket. We've had a conversation with them about it.
Their percentage will go down?
So their amount would go down, their percentage is the same, but their overall collection increases because of the money they bring in.
If they're still taking a percent, they're
Still
taking
taking
a
their
percent
full
of what you
percent, yeah.
actually collect.
Whatever percentage that is, they're still
Correct.
taking their full percent. It's just less because there's a discounted amount.
Correct. With that, so it would have to be paid in full, and it would have to be at the time. So, they couldn't say, oh, I'll mail you a check. That's not how we're gonna do it, right? It would be, no, right now, we need the money. If not, then you're not eligible for that discount.
So what about the processing fees that are associated with like credit cards and e-checks and other things? I mean, there's a lot of things I'm seeing now. You're getting charged a 2% fee for, using a credit card or those other things, so.
So that's part of the thing that we just kind of write into the cost of doing business, unfortunately, is
So we're gonna eat that?
we are eating it now.
They're eating it now.
Yes.
We figured that out when our bank did it every year, so.
They're one of the departments that the
But it's not
county's
going
actually
through our
paying.
bank, cause it's going through the billing company.
Let's go through our bank.
So so the billing company does it, but it processes through our bank. So
And
we'll-
what's that percentage, do we know?
I think it's 2.25.
And that's countywide, any other departments that accept.
Their department just happens to be that we pay that fee. Other departments were pushing it.
I think we charge an extra 2%.
Yeah, other departments do, EMS does
Oh, I'm
not.
sorry, I
So
didn't
we're,
tell all
we're
departments.
absorbing that fee, other departments are pushing it.
Okay.
And then we need to have an aspect to send actual claims that have gone delinquent to collections at that point. So once they go over 120 days from the first invoice and they haven't been set up on a payment plan or haven't been paid, those then need to go to collection. Then, so they'll send a total of 3 invoices every 30 days. If after the 3rd invoice, they have not received any payment in full or have not set up a payment plan, then 30 days later, it will go to collections. If somebody sets up that makes a payment plan, and then all of a sudden they stop paying for some reason, they go after 30 days, or after 60 days, they go to collections. We're not stopping and waiting another 120 days. It would be 120 days from their first invoice or 60 days from their last payment if they were on a payment plan and stopped. Right now, we have several that are sitting there that we need to send off to collections. And part of that is we need to either realize we're going to get paid for that at some point, either through the normal billing process or through collections, or at some point we need to start cleaning the books and writing off those things as bad debt. That would be, so if you notice, it'll say not made in 60 days. If it's been more than 90 days, since the pass of the first invoice, and they said they would do a payment plan, it immediately goes to collection. If it's more than 60 since the agreement date, then it goes to collections. So we do need to get a collection process of, we have to have a policy that I can send to the billing company that says this is what we will do, and so that they're legally covered for implementing the collection process. That collections then comes back to the county's third-party collection agency, and I don't know who that is, Capital Collections, I think is what it's called. But, so they'll refer that back.
So how long can they make payment plans for?
So we try to keep them no greater than 2 years
Is that
on
a
that.
policy too, or does that need to be part of this? And-
So it is part of it in here. Let's see where I can find it. It's in one of them. So here, minimum payment amounts, it's on page 3 of the financial hardship. The minimum payment amounts, if it's below $250 of their initial balance,
Page of the financial
it's
hardship.
$25 per month is what they have to pay. If it's over $250, it's $50 a month that they have to pay under a payment plan.
They could do anywhere from 3 months to 2 years.
Correct, depending on their balance. So if they've got $1,000 or $1,500 bill, it's gonna take a good amount to try to get to that.
But if they got a $10,000 bill, it's
Did
gonna
I not
take,
give you everything? I'm sorry. Which one are you looking for?
This is the only thing I have, is the application on financial hardship. Pages on that.
How about those? Sorry.
so it could take 4 years if it's like a $10,000 payment, because their minimum is $50 a month that they gotta pay.
It could, but what we could do is limit that to 2 years. I think at that point, if it's, so normally if it's 10,000, so David, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 3 times in the last month, we've had to do what's called an ABN. It's an advanced beneficiary notice. That basically, it's an unwarranted transfer from a hospital to another hospital that Medicare, we know up front, will not pay. Because they're passing the closest appropriate facility, or they're already at a facility that's capable of taking care of their condition, but because they want to see their doctor, or they have a friend, like one of them was, my friend's a neurologist and I want to go see them in St. Louis, but Medicare won't pay. We know that up front. Medicare will not pay, so we legally have to have them sign an ABN. So we go in, we explain what the charges will be, what the cost per mileage is, and what they're responsible financially for. They have to sign that, but that doesn't guarantee payment. That just means that we've done our legal part through Medicare in order to, so that we can bill the patient. Without that document, and we know going into it that they need an ABN, we cannot go back and bill the patient at that point. So we have to get that up front if we know that it's a non-covered service by Medicare. And that's happened 3 times. Most of those bills are 8,000, between 3 and 8,000. One wanted to go to Oklahoma City, one went to Kansas City, and twice it's gone to St. Louis, that were unnecessary transfers from a medical standpoint. That there were closer facilities that could either take care of them, like Mizzou, or the facility they were at were already capable and they just didn't want to be there. So it was for choice.
My thing is, even if it takes 4 years, getting it paid is better than not getting paid. I mean, you got car loans now that are 6 and 7 years. I'm like,
We're trying to maximize the reimbursement to put back into the county, into the funds, so that we can then continue to purchase, the equipment that we need, et cetera. So this is one of the processes to increase that revenue, or recapture the expense that we had, is probably a better way to word that. Because we're only able to charge loaded mileage, so if we go to St. Louis, all of the stuff coming back is basically free. We can't charge that, we can't charge coming back. It's only when someone is in the truck can we charge.
So so I haven't read through this, probably as well as I need to, but, so, under the write-off authority and collections, item 3.
Yes, sir.
So deceased patients,
Yes, sir.
just because someone's deceased doesn't mean that they don't have money.
Correct, so we try to go after them. If they have a hardship at that point, we would not send them
Well,
to
how do we
collection.
determine that they've had a hardship unless they apply for through our?
So their family would, and then if their family came and, basically what that's saying is a deceased
So
patient
that
would have
would
to go to collections.
fall under item C then? Not under item A. I mean, just because they're deceased doesn't mean that they get write-off. They have to file the hardship.
Correct.
And so, I don't know, I mean, so maybe I have a financial hardship and maybe my W-2 doesn't show any income at all, but maybe I'm sitting on $1 million sitting in the bank, I mean.
So
You
bank
know.
statements are required as well as part of the process that we have in there, that they have to show their bank
But I
statements
mean,
for
how do,
W-2s.
who's gonna verify that that's every bank statement that they have? I mean, they could have a bank statement that shows 0, and they have an IRA with Edward Jones that shows, $10 million.
Correct.
I mean, so, as a family member, and my uncle just died, and he's worth a crap load of money, I mean, yeah, I'm gonna try to get you to write that off, because it's more money for me. I mean, I just see a lot of, trust and verify. I don't trust anybody, so, I mean, I just, and then even incarcerated people, I mean, same way there. I mean, they could have all kinds of money that they could pay the bill, they just can't afford to pay for a good attorney maybe, or maybe they just did something really stupid. So, I mean, I get the hardship form, and I think probably for most people that would be fine, but are we opening up a whole nother problem of things that we have to trust and verify to get people to actually know, does this person deserve a discount? Or are they just trying to,
So I think that falls back on my staff and I to do that due diligence, to look at that and to make that judgment call, and that's part of why in there it says that we would absorb that responsibility and authority to make that judgment call based on that, because we're trying to do that as best we can now, You know, we had an individual that was able to prove they got about $900 a month in aid from Medicare, or Medicare, or Social Security. We knew that there was no way this individual was going to pay. I mean, if you looked at just what they were bringing in, there was no possible way. So going after them and trying to get that money wasn't possible. So what we're trying to do is just formalize the process as best we can. We can certainly change anything you'd like in here. We're looking for guidance more than anything on what you guys would like us to do based on a policy. It's also part of the CAS process that we also have to have some type of guidance and policies in place. So that's another aspect to this.
So I'm ignorant of all this, but so somebody comes to me and they want a discount, and they say that they've got a hardship. Where do I go to look up a credit score for them? Or where do I go to figure out some means to say, do you have financial resources to pay this or not?
So one of the things that we can do on that form is that it allows us to go and reach out to individuals. So we could call the bank on the bank statement, verify that this is an actual, is this their only account? So those types of things, by them applying for that hardship, we can then go and look for, are we getting the full story? Now, at some point, we just have to trust that we're getting the full story. So yes, that is a risk to us in that aspect of things.
Yeah, but therein lies the problem for me, the trust part. So if somebody owes me money and they're trying to weasel out of it, they're gonna give me all kinds of sob stories and everything else, and so, yeah, how do I know that they're telling me the truth? Well, more than likely, I'd say not. So, giving me half the truth.
Well, if you have some procedure to somehow verify that, then I'm fine with this. We just gotta figure out how you do it, but,
I'm open to suggestions.
yeah, philosophically, I think, yeah, I'm fine with it. I think,
Fine with what?
on the hardship part, you just gotta figure out how you do get verification that this person has no assets.
Just approving the financial hardship portion of it.
Yeah. And,
Does our billing company have the resources to do some of this, or?
So they're the ones that collect all the forms and then send it to us for review. So they've been doing that now, is collecting all the information. They submit everything to them. Once they get everything, they submit it to us for our review. We look it over. If we have questions, we'll either reach back to the billing company or directly to the patient or their family and say, we need more information, or this doesn't appear to meet. Is there anything else you'd like us to consider? And then at that point, at this point, we're making a judgment call of, yeah, this person does or does
So
not.
you and your staff are gonna make the judgment call, or the billing company's gonna make the judgment call?
We make the call. The billing company collects everything, puts it together, and then submits it to us for review. They pre-screen it basically, and I don't know how they pre-screen, but once they get to that point that they think that we need to take a look at it, then they've been sending them to us to look at, to say, hey, do you think this one either should get a discount, or is this a true write-off for financial hardship?
So what percentage of the bills that we're sending to them does this apply?
So we've gotten 3, 4 in the last 3-4 weeks that we look at. So it's not a great percentage, but it's enough that we would need to take action when we got them. So while I was on vacation, I know 3 came in while I was on vacation. Before that, I think I reviewed 3 the previous month. So it's kind of hit or miss on when they come in. We don't see a lot of them, and I think that if we can get the part where, hey, if you pay up front, you get a discount type thing, pay in full now, I think we should actually see the ones that are financially capable of paying, we will be able to collect more in that aspect and hopefully reduce the aspect of those that don't. That's my hope.
So when you offer a prompt pay discount, basically is what you're doing, and so say my bill's $900, and so you're gonna give me a 10% discount. But, so say that's within the first 30 days. How do I know what my insurance has paid? Because I'm basically responsible for the rest, right?
So they don't bill until the insurance has had an opportunity to pay. So, now there are times that the insurance will sit on them and then the patient will get the bill, because ultimately, when they sign our trip ticket for permission to treat, transport, lease information, and billing, that automatically says that they understand that it is their ultimate responsibility to ensure that their insurance pays in a timely fashion. Now, one of the things that's good about Missouri is Missouri allows for direct pay from an insurance company to a provider, whereas an example would be South Carolina. They don't have to pay to the provider, they pay the patient, and then the provider is constantly chasing the patient, trying to get that reimbursement back from them, which I can tell you is way unsuccessful, and that's why you had to use debt set off and all of that to seize their income taxes, to try to recover that money. So Missouri is unique that we can go and do that. So there are times where a patient will go ahead and balance their bill, and then the insurance will come back and say, oh, hey, here's the money, and so then we end up issuing a refund in that process.
So how long does that process take? So I take a ride on the 1st of January. How long does it take to get through the insurance?
It's normally 60 days for Medicare. And then
What about private pay?
private pay depends on the carrier itself, but most of them are 60, sometimes 90 days before we have a determination. Some are a little quicker than that. Medicaid is the slowest, it seems, and that's the one that takes a little bit more time.
So I mean, if you're approaching 90 days, you're almost into the 120-day time frame, and you're almost into delinquent, where you're sending it to collections.
So
And you're waiting on your
that would be
insurance
from
to
the
pay.
invoice. So it's from the first invoice date, not from the date of service. So that's why we put in there that it's the first invoice date. So normally they won't invoice them for 30 to 60 days. Normally it's 60 days when they'll start sending out that first invoice, because they're waiting to see what the insurance company will do. And from that point, it should be within the time frame of getting a determination from the insurance company. So that's why it's written that way, is from invoice, not from date of service.
So why are we taking 30 to 60 days to invoice?
Because we're trying to wait to see if insurance, so we don't have to go back through.
So they have invoiced, they just haven't invoiced the patient.
Correct. Correct. They've invoiced the insurance to see what reimbursement they're going to get from them. It takes about 2 weeks for us to get through our process and get it over to the billing company, and for them to process it, to ensure that it meets all the legal requirements, so we don't get into a fraud situation for inappropriately billing or upcharging. So there's checks and balances that are done with that to make sure it's accurate. And so that takes about 2 weeks from the date of service before the claim is actually filed with the insurance company.
Yeah, I'd just like to give all of this some more thought. I mean, I don't disagree that, trying to get blood out of a turnip is tough, so, so the billing company's waiting 60 days to try to see if they're getting money out of the insurance. And then after those 60 days are up, then they're gonna send another 3 invoices every 30 days to try to get payment from the individual. And so we're,
So about 5 months is when they would go to collections without any action from the patient or the insurance.
It's just like our health insurance program. I mean, there's a 60 to 90 day lag in
Right.
when a person goes to the doctor is when we're actually paying that bill.
right? I guess there's problems with that. I mean, obviously, we know where our employees are, but when people switch employers or whatever, and they move, so now you've taken a bill that you've said, hey, this is doable pending insurance or something, and you get them a bill to their current address where they're living right now. Because, 60, 90 days from now, they could be in another state somewhere else.
So a lot of times the larger billing companies use a third-party service that goes and looks for current addresses. They cross-reference phone numbers. They'll look at all those different things that are reported to credit agencies to try to locate that individual. And so they have those resources that they use pretty regularly to be able to track them down. So that's actually pretty successful on getting where that person is located, and being able to do that. That's one of the conversations that I've had recently with them about that process. And I don't remember the name of the company that they use, but it's actually a pretty well-known one that a lot of the hospitals use as well. That's one of the other things that, what is it?
TLO.
That might be. And then one of the other things that they do is they also go back to the hospitals and try to verify billing information, because sometimes we're not able to get it, but the hospitals are, and so they've got to go back and be able to verify that. Hospitals normally have the most accurate information or the most current, and so that can take some time. One of the things that wasn't happening last year was they weren't getting frequent billing signatures or permission to treat signatures. And so then billing companies were having to go back, chase down the patient, get them to actually sign the form so that we could actually start billing. Now we have that as a requirement in our system that's locked down, that if they don't get those signatures appropriately, we have them upload insurance cards, face sheets, and we've seen our billing time cut down because of the staff's due diligence, and they understand that that's part of their job, is to ensure that we can stay as financially solvent as possible as well.
What percentage are we looking at? I mean, is 80% of the people are no problem, and 20% or 90% are no problem, and what is the percentage?
So it's more
that
based
we-
on payer type than the actual, I would say, person. So right now, you're averaging about 60% are Medicare patients, and about 20% are or 40%, I'm sorry, so 40% is Medicare, 20% is Medicaid, and the rest, about 30% are general, like normal health insurances. And then you have about 10%, which what we would call self-pay or non-insured. And so they're kind of lumped together of, this is your deductible piece, is the self-pay part, or just the straight uninsured. Your uninsured collection rate is extremely low, but that's historical through most agencies. So we're running where I've seen it run before. I do think we have an opportunity by some of these things increasing that, but we're not going to get to a 50%. I would be very shocked if we got above 25%. But if we can, that's 25%, up to, 15% or 20% that we're not getting currently. Some of the months we're running at 3% collection rate on self-pay, and there are times where we're as high as 12, but we're averaging up anywhere between 5 and 7 total percent year end. So of self-pay itself. Again, that's the deductible side and or the completely uninsured. Now, as far as money from the collection rates from the insurance companies, those are actually pretty decent. I know this would be ironic. Lawyers are the worst to get out, so we have outstanding bills to lawyers who have clients, and I believe the last time I looked at it was right before I went on vacation, and none of them have paid at this point. So we're trying to find out, hey, your client still has a bill at some point, they're due. And so we're getting that, but we can't send them the collections until we get a collection policy approved, so that the billing company has their legal cover to do that. So that's why we'd like to get something, doesn't necessarily have to be today, but I would like to try to do it by next meeting to get, if we need to individually sit down and work this through, so that we can start sending those that should be in collections to collections.
So on number 3,
Of which one, I'm sorry?
Write-off authority questions, it actually should be number 2, because you skipped
Oh,
number 2, but.
okay.
So you have a deceased patient, I'm not really sure how that works, so you will bill their insurance or whatever, get that portion. Once
Correct.
you determine that they're deceased, you're automatically going to write off the personal portion?
So we'd attempt to get it, and then if before it went to collections, we would just write it off at that point, is what the idea behind that would be, is we would try to get everything we can, but before it went to the actual third-party collection is when we would write that off, but we
So-
can certainly change that.
So that's all of those, they're deceased and incarcerated and all of those?
Correct.
You would make all effort to collect in that time frame. You just wouldn't turn them over to the collection?
Correct, because at that point, we wouldn't, chances are it would cost us, in the long run, more time and or a higher rate when the county rebid for going after things that weren't collectible.
So that's based on the individual, you know, whether it's deceased or incarcerated, their ability or their family's ability to pay the claim. I mean, and that's a self-determination.
Well, yes and no. So it's their ability to pay the claim or their financial responsible party to prove it, right? So again, that would kind of go back to the incarcerated individual. If they're incarcerated for 30 days, but they're, you know, they're a wealthy business individual that just happens to be in the, you know, jail for 30 days, that in and of itself wouldn't qualify, right? They couldn't claim a hardship, which is why we can change some of these to say, hey, you know, they still have to go through, instead of just having automatic write-off before collection, we could have it say the family has to then fill out the hardship form and we have to be able to verify. I'm okay with that. I mean, that makes sense as well. So that might be a better way to go about it.
I think there are certain circumstances with deceased or incarcerated that
Sure.
would have to be verified. I mean, I think if you're dealing with someone that's bankrupt or something like that, they've already proven that they.
Well, and so can power of attorney and whatever for people that don't have wills and stuff. I mean, that takes a while to get all that stuff done if people, you know, didn't leave some directive before they passed. Or there could be multiple parties involved that.
Big one probate's even longer than that.
Yeah,
disputes,
yeah.
so,
If there's anything left of probate.
Yeah, my mother-in-law passed away in May. She had a trust, so we're already paying all that off and distributing, and we saved enough for taxes. My sister in Georgia died 3 years ago, be 4 years in April. We're just now settling her estate because she did not have a trust and she had millions of dollars. And it's like, damn lawyers took most of it.
Not this one.
No, I know. But it's probate can,
And that's part of it is in
Yeah.
order, my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jill, is that in order to make a claim onto probate, we would then have to submit something saying that we're attaching a claim onto that estate.
You do.
And so at that point, is it more, if it's a $200 pending charge, is it more for us to go through that hassle of trying to do that than just say, okay, hey, it is what it is? And that's kind of part of what these are, is the cost of trying to recover some of that money worth the time and effort and actual real cost for a hope of getting something? And so that's what we're trying to risk benefit on this.
And that 120 days is a moving date. If there's activity on the account or things happening, that 120 days gets extended.
Correct. Right, now, but unless they're on a payment plan and then they suddenly stopped paying, or, right, their withdrawal or their automatic withdrawal, like bounced or whatever, then that would be a 60-day hard from that point. If you don't come back into good graces of, you know, your account's caught up, then at that 60-day mark, you would go to collections.
All right, just want to do one on I guess 3, 4, should be 3.
Mm-hmm.
Work comp claim says agree to a discount up to 7% if paid immediately versus 5D, which I guess would be 4D.
Right.
I mean, is there a reason why one discount is different
One, we're
than the other?
extending to work comp as a business, and so we're trying, so this would be the D would be based on a private pay, which I can make more clear in there. But the work comp part of it is because it's based on a business. Basically, a health insurance is really what work comp is, per se. I mean, I could take that out and we could just give a standard across the board discount like it is in D.
I don't know if I had any feelings either way. I was just curious why there was a difference, so. Then if you go to 5F or 4F, whatever it is.
Right.
Chris kind of mentioned the fees for credit cards and debits. Are we eating that, or is that,
So our department does eat that as part of the recovery process.
but we can put that in here where,
We can add that percentage of whatever is 2.25 or whatever, something like that. We could add that in as part of it. Our concern is that the amount of money that we're dealing with, that may turn someone off to pay it. And so would we rather eat the 2.25 or whatever percent in order to realize the full amount? We just figured based on the amount that it was probably better to internally eat that in an effort to collect what was due. Again, that cost benefit.
but, I mean, it's a convenience fee is what it is.
It is, correct.
So,
The other side of that is if you get checks that are sent in or somebody wants to come pay cash or something, that becomes a whole nother process that is,
I thought it said you can't do checks.
so you can't do checks by mail, but they
Okay.
could come up to the county
Okay.
at that point
Okay.
and, pay and or, right? But then at that point, what has to happen is then we have to scan them, we have to send them to the billing company because then they have to be able to verify that. It becomes a big nightmare for that process. So for cash and for personal checks to show up is a whole nother process. So for us, it is better from a chances of realizing the payment, and B, from a logistical and manpower aspect, it's better for us to have
so it's a
them paid.
convenience fee for us too.
It is.
Okay.
Unless you guys see that
Better for them to
differently.
pay by debit or credit card, is what you're saying.
It's better for us too.
It's better, right,
So-
well, so if they paid by electronic check, debit, or credit, it is a much cleaner process through accounting, through the whole back end, than it would be to get cash or a personal check.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind, I mean, of course, I don't like paying extra, but I just renewed plates on 3 vehicles. Took about 15 minutes online, and I know it costs a little $4 or $5 extra to do it with a debit card, but I didn't have to stand in line, I didn't have to, just all the inconvenience of that stuff was worth it, so. But if it's also a convenience for us, then I can understand eating it. The only other thing I had was 3B under procedure. I think that's just a typo for invoices.
Or, yes,
Where
that's a-
insurance.
Yes, that's a typo that I'll fix. I gotta put an H in there.
So can we, I mean, you're needing to get this, you need to get some kind of a policy in effect. So even if we do this, can we get it to where, for now, I mean, I'd just be curious what's coming through. Maybe it's gonna be a pain in your butt for now, but we'd still have to approve it for now until we see how it's all working out, and we'd see what would automatically be taken care of without it, you'd have to come up here and deal with that
So
at the time. and-
we can create a process that shows write-offs, to where we calculate it and track that, if that's what you're asking. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're asking, to show what would be written off or had been written off as a process to show, and then we can then have that conversation, say at the 4-month mark or the 6-month mark or whatever you want it to be, and say, okay, these are why these were written off. Now, part of that, I think we need to make sure, and I don't know if that would be a closed session process or not, is to be able to then go and say, hey, here are the patients, here's the amount that were written off, and here was the financial. I mean, we would have to present that information. That's one of the reasons why we want that authority to get delegated down, is because then we don't have to present personal information to you guys in that process.
Yeah, I mean, in the medical field, it's done all the time. If you have an emergency appendectomy or something, and you don't just have that money laying around, they allow you to make payments on it, so I would think this would be the same, and I'm sure they have people that don't have the funds, so they end up having to write them off, or spend a lot of money just trying to collect them every month by mailing stuff.
I think most hospitals spend about 20% in charity care of their overall balance sheet, if I recall correctly. This would be much, much less than that, but there is an aspect of Medicare and Medicaid under the financial aspects that they expect some form of what we would call charity care, or in this case, financial assistance. The one I'm most interested in today is at least that part of the collections, is if you guys are okay with us, at least under the procedures on page 3 and 4 of the write-off authority and collections, so I can at least get that sent over, that verbiage sent over, so that we can start that process with them. And then if you guys would like to kick around the rest of this, and we can meet individually or talk on the phone or however you.
Yeah, I'm okay with 3 and 4. I think we need to discuss the benefits for city councils,
Sure.
Cole County, and all, but that's different.
I can take things out and add things in, however you'd like to do it, so.
3 and 4 being,
No,
2 and
page,
3.
page 3 and 4. So under procedure,
Page 3 and 4.
got it.
so policy 2010-10, write-off authority and collections. Starting at procedure, which was on page 3, through the back of that one, which is page 4. So that's the collection procedure. That's the one I'm most interested in trying to get approved, if possible. If not, I can certainly go back and work on it some more.
So the process of just sending it to collections.
They need authority to do that, and what the guidelines are. Like, basically, what does the county want to be the triggers for collection?
I mean, I'm good with the collections part of it. I mean, it seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, the procedure itself, I don't have a problem with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get that written up and them sign it, be
Yeah,
helpful.
we would like signed copies just because for auditors, dates
Sure.
and signs saying that you guys have approved these.
Yeah, I can get some. I can even make a separate policy just for collection.
Yeah.
And then, they'll have some overlap verbiage from some of the other ones, because legally I gotta make sure that it flows correctly. But I can get you one where it's just a collections policy, and then we can go into the write-offs, and then from the financial hardship, so we can separate them out.
Do you guys have a problem with the financial hardship one?
I don't.
We did have a charity policy in place when we first took it over.
Correct.
I
That
just
was,
sent you that copy.
so this isn't really something totally brand new and spelling it out and how you're going to handle it, but.
Correct.
We did have a charity policy in place beforehand.
It was just very broad and it
Right.
didn't, it left too much to interpretation, and this, to me, tightens down what we can and cannot do. and what authorities, who has those authorities to make that. Otherwise, my concern is I'd like to try to not bring up personal information or aspects to that to you guys if at all possible. Certainly can if you'd like.
So you want to browse through some of the other stuff then?
Well, I just,
Revisit next week again?
I mean, kind of to your point too, is that, I mean, people change and different people change in different positions, and I think it's a slippery slope when you start authorizing people to just relinquish, amounts due to the county. And I mean, I get what you're saying. I mean, why spend $500 to collect a $200 bill? I mean, and that's, don't make sense. So, but I mean, I just think that we need to be kept abreast of what's being released. I mean, not saying that we need maybe ultimate authority, but at the same time, just like the assessor was up here and said, hey, we made these adjustments, here's what we did, here's what we wrote off.
So we can do a quarterly
Yeah.
or a semi-annual report on
Yeah.
that if you'd like. So that's something I can have built in with Digitech, the billing company, where we can run a report to say, here were the approved write-offs from the county. So that way you guys could have it, and then if there were questions to that, we would still have all of the forms, basically kept for auditing purposes more than anything. That way you guys say, hey, we'd like to see the actual forms. I would black out the information as
Sure.
best as possible.
But I mean, within that report, I mean, okay, so we're gonna write off X amount. Would there also be a way within that report to say, here's how much collections to try to collect,
Yes,
as
so
well?
what, we can get a report that would show, here's what was sent, here were the balances sent to collections, and we could probably run that one actually every month, and be able to do that.
I think it just help us is to know kind of where we're at, what's going
Yep.
on, what we've received in insurance payments.
And I think the
with-
ones
with
you
our
get
new-
now say a lot of that, but there shouldn't be a collections one in there, because we haven't sent anything, because we haven't had a collections
I used to
policy.
get those monthly reports, but I don't get them anymore with this new company. I know Kristen does, but
Okay.
I
Yeah.
used
What they're
to
sending right
tell
now
you-
isn't a kind of an overview, but I think through ambulance commander, we can go in.
We can
and
drill
run,
in,
yeah, we
right.
can run it.
We can drill in.
Are we happy with our new company?
They are, so they've, we knew that it was going to take 6 to 8 months just based on the processes to start realizing that. But our actual overall collection percentage has gone up. Now there's been some ebbs and flows in there. We're aware of one of them. And so we expected that hit to filter out over about a 4-month period, and it has. And so we should see it start to climb back up, so.
Well, on the policy part of the write-off, I mean, almost on number one, I would probably just get rid of everything underneath there after it says that you're gonna make reasonable collection efforts.
As far as, all of number one under policy on write-off authority and collections.
Correct.
Get rid of all of number one? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, you can have, CCEMS shall make reasonable collection efforts, blah, 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 all the way to parties, and then stop there.
Okay.
With no exceptions, unless y'all are wanting to have some exceptions in there. I mean, we can always go back and include some exceptions if we decide we wanna do that as a benefit to our employees or to, whatever, first responders or something, if we decide to do that later. But we're just needing to get something going now so that you have something to work with.
I can go with just the procedure side of this, and I'll just put it into a new format, and as long as I know that that's where you
So
guys are
then when are
okay
you
with
gonna
it.
wanna work on the policy part?
Well, so wherever you guys tell me what that policy part is, if you wanna do it now, then I'll clean it up and bring it back next week.
I mean, obviously, if a law enforcement or firefighter or whatever's, hurt in a line of duty or whatever, I mean, I assume that we're probably doing that at no charge.
That is not a current policy, but
It's not a policy, but it's a unwritten rule.
it is, and so we would like to formalize that so that it covers us.
So you wanna leave D in there?
Well, I mean,
something to that verbiage, the way I read it, D means like anytime. And so if you're a firefighter or a first responder,
Well, it says while on.
While on duty.
it did say while on duty.
Yes,
Okay.
it says while on duty, so, I mean, that clears that very specifically. A through C, we can certainly take out, or we can modify A to where it's just if you're employed by the
This is
county.
Chelsea's fault.
And leave the dependents off, and just be the employee itself, or we can take it all out. Like I said, this part is more of a working document, I'm just looking for some guidance so that I can get a formalized
Why don't you
policy.
take like A, B, C, and D out and let us, I mean, that way you can go ahead and
So
proceed.
you
and
want
then we
D
will-
out, the firefighter one, like the first responders stuff?
No,
So,
no.
all right, so.
A, B, C, and we can discuss,
Okay,
Take the other three out.
right.
yeah.
And then
Okay.
in two, do you wanna add something that they have to fill out, financial hardship?
Yeah, so I can add that.
I mean, could you,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's 3 on here, but it's actually 2, but, I mean, could you subcategorize under hardship approved and put deceased, incarcerated? I mean,
I can.
they'd have to go through that process of filling out a hardship to include deceased, incarcerated,
Yep, I could do that.
maybe those others. I mean, I think we're dealing with a pretty small percentage of people that are gonna qualify.
I would probably take E out. E was something that all the other agencies that I talked to had in there, but I would probably take E out, personally, but I wanted to leave it in there for your conversation.
As well.
Okay, so E's out.
Okay.
Are you guys good with that as well?
I'm fine with that
Yep.
one, yeah.
Okay, and then not going after anybody with a balance less than $5. I'm just trying to be proactive on that.
So I'm kinda with Jeff though on 3, which is negotiate discounts for the workers' comp.
Yeah,
Would it be cleaner to just make that a 10 like it is?
yes, and it would be
10 in this
cleaner.
one?
Yes,
I
it would be
mean,
cleaner.
And
So we're not looking for, oh, this one was 7% and oh, that one's 10%.
It would be cleaner, yes.
I would say that even for whatever amount's owed, if it's $500 or $5,000, leave it at a certain percentage. And
The idea would be is that if it was over 1,000, we were trying to give a little bit of a larger discount to try to get them to pay like right then.
I mean, I understand where you're coming from with it, but I mean, it's, go to the lumber yard, you buy stuff, well, they don't even do that anymore, but used to, if you paid it by the 10th of the month, you got a 2% discount. Well, didn't matter how much you spent, but 2% always adds up, so I don't know, I just think that 10% across the board would
Okay,
be just fine with me, but I don't know. I'm not gonna have heartburn either way. I think that's,
How fast did work comp claims typically get paid?
It depends if a company has a company that does it for them, or if they take care of it themselves.
And-
They're
And if
self-insured.
there's questions regarding that.
right, and then if they got a lawyer involved and
Yeah.
now all of a sudden, now it's a
That slows down.
nightmare. So the idea is the faster you can get a work comp
Pick it on the
claim,
lawyers.
Add
paid,
10%,
Yeah.
add 10%.
I'm sorry,
for legal
Jill.
fee.
right?
No,
hey, you
I'm
always
talking
pick
about
on them
the
till you
bill.
need them, right?
So you guys want me just to make it a
Once the
flat
attorney's engaged,
percent
then
or like a
10%.
flat, like it's, work comp is the same as anybody
I was
else?
just wanting to see where they're at with
I
it.
mean, I think it's probably cleaner. Okay.
yeah, that's
All
fine.
right, so
If
I'll
you
just
think
make that
it's
all
gonna-
across the board then.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanna leave it in there
Increases
as a
billable hours.
negotiated discount for work comp, but I would use
The same
percentage
percentage.
as the
Okay.
others.
Okay, I can do that. All right, do you guys want a flat rate across the board regardless of amount owed, or do you want the tiered process?
As far as the 100,
So-
70, 50.
No, so,
1,000 and under at 10%.
Oh.
Above 1,000 would be 15%.
Typically, ambulance ride is under $1,000, isn't it? If I remember right, I've had 3, so.
kind of depends on where you're going and what you
Maybe,
get done. So if you're an advanced
Going
life
to MU.
support, so if you're going to MU, chances are, that you have bypassed the closest appropriate facility unless you have a condition that requires you to go to MU.
Right.
At that point, you're probably looking at an ALS2 charge, which is about, for Medicare, they're paying about $720, I believe, on that. And if they're paying $720 plus your mileage at a rate of roughly 8.5, I think it is. I might have to go back and look. So no, it'd be over $1,000. But Medicare itself is going to pick up that, and then the patient has that 20%. Now, if they have Advantage, Advantage will pick up the rest of that. If you're uninsured or deemed not medically necessary, that's well over $1,500. Because
But for
remember,
most people that are insured, their billable amount's gonna be less than $1,000.
should be, correct. These are generally the ones that are, your repeat customers that we're doing for either they have a long-standing health issue or they're an individual that abuses the system. And so those are where your balances start to grow.
What it costs to go to Oklahoma City?
What was it, $9,000, I think is what we quoted them, and then all of a sudden it was, oh, we don't wanna go there, how about Tulsa? And I'm like, all right, well, that's like 7,200 or something, I don't know. It was- I don't know, they ultimately
Okay.
did not get transported, the individual died before the family had made the determination, so.
I'm good with the tiered amount.
Yeah.
Okay. So either way, it's fine with me.
Okay. All right, anything else on the write-off and authority collections one? I'll clean it up and get it back to you guys. Is there anything else on that one that you saw? And then the financial hardship one, did you guys have any on that one? Oh, yeah, I gave mine up to somebody, I don't know where it went. Thanks. Oh, that's right, he took it. I forgot to get one. Yes, okay. Do
So
you-
clean both of those up, bring them back next week, and you guys will sign a hard copy.
Yep. Yep.
Date it.
And are you guys good with the poverty levels on number 8? That's probably the most, I don't want to call it controversial, but the one that's going to have the greatest impact of what those tier levels are. We can discuss later, or if you guys
How
want
does
to
that
kick it around.
compare to what we had in our policy? I mean, it's just, there's different wording and stuff. And the old one we did, I think, was just what Spencer that recommended, I don't know.
So
how much.
theirs was very broad, and I thought left open to more discount than probably was necessary at times. And to me, the way I read theirs was more of, I'm gonna give a discount as much as necessary in order to get as much as I can right now, versus the actual writing off a complete percentage, you know, or whatever. I think it left it open too much.
FPL.
Or just leave that open, and if you guys have any comments on those, but I think they're fine. I mean,
Yeah, I'm
So-
fine.
Probably dealing with 1 or 2% of the total.
Just for clarification, then on 8,
Yes, sir.
so say you're at 2.5 times the poverty level, so that would mean you would not qualify for B.
Correct, you would have
to reach the 3.
Correct, sir.
Okay, so individuals that are, they gotta be at 2 to get the,
Correct. The good
Okay.
part about this to me is that this keeps, because we're using HHS's poverty guidelines, it keeps us cleaner in the process of saying who is or isn't in that poverty level.
but in the old policy, it had between up to 200%, and then at 200 to 400, you got the 70% discount.
Right.
But this just says, hey, you've gotta be at the 3 before you get to 70, and,
Correct.
okay. That's the only one of the real differences I noticed.
Should that policy read, should it be changed based on current
poverty guidelines?
It is, it does say there that the current guidelines, and then what we'll do is we will update this form. So I checked last night just to see if the 2020s were out yet, and they were not. But it does say based on current guidelines, and I believe it actually says that on number 6, says CCMS will use the current poverty guidelines as published by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, attachment B.
You may wanna try to figure out when those come out and say updated this date every year or something, just to make sure that there isn't somebody that falls in between, like, hey, the 20 are out there, but the 19's still in the form, you know?
Right.
kind of.
Okay.
Effective date of when the poverty changes? I don't know.
Something, yeah,
I mean, when they publish them and when they're effective, I don't know if that's different or.
I'll look. I tried to do a little research on that last night, seeing like when they're gonna come out, and I couldn't see, but what I can try to do is go back and see when last year's was published. I just don't know if I'll be successful, but I'll try.
Not telling how many months behind they are. So,
Right. All right. So I'll clean
Okay.
these up and get these back to you. Do you guys have any other aspect on the financial hardship one? No.
Nope.
All right, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is why I try to do all of this individually on the phone, because it's minutia, like, so. Yeah, painful.
Okay.
Anything else?
Anything else to come before us, before we go into closed session?
Nope. I think-
Hearing,
I gotta get rid of a cup of coffee, I do know that.
I move we go into closed session pursuant to section 610.021 of the revised statutes of Missouri for personnel issues sub 13.
Second.
roll call?
Sam?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Chris?
Call my name?
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry.